that will be made available in PDF on our community website, which does do a little bit of an explanation of all the features and classifies them by group. So I'm going to use this as my guide to go through the enhancements as we're talking about them. And again, this will be available after the call as well. So I've grouped the enhancements by type. So we have some information on general setup and security enhancements, view changes, go through them all. View changes, statistical and search engine, checklist enhancements, publications, child care, record privacy, volunteer specific, CIC specific, other common enhancements, common meaning both CIC and volunteer, and then finally client tracker enhancements. So that's the order in which I will be doing it. Most of the features are common to everyone, so I'm starting with those. Near the end of the call, we'll go through the CIC specific, volunteer specific, and then finally the client tracker enhancement. In some cases, the feature touches on more than one area, so I've just done my best to categorize things as appropriately as possible, but you do need to review everything to catch everything. Okay? I put the number, which is the number in the feature tracking database. So if you want to look up, sometimes there's more detailed information in the request if you want to look that up for future reference. Okay, so we will start out with the general setup and security enhancements. We have revised the way that all of the setup items were organized. A lot of these changes, including this one, are really geared around the idea that we may be looking at potential database mergers over the next year where users that currently have their own databases will be merging in together. And as a result of that, we really have to be very conscious of the security and setup issues. So we have further restricted who is allowed to make setup changes. So other than for publications, all other setup items are now confined to super users. Agency administrators are no longer permitted to modify community or checklist setup, and all setup items have now been moved into the main setup area. So I'm going to here we go, I'm already signed in. So we now have our new setup menu. You'll notice this menu is much smaller, and we now have our giant new setup menu, which classifies all of the different types of setup. So this is the brand new setup menu. You'll notice we have all the checklists here. All the classification system management is all here as well. So at the top we have anything shared between the modules, then community information, and then finally volunteer related. Okay, so everything that used to be in the main menu here, other than publications, which continues to have the same permissions it always had, other than that, all setup items have been moved into setup menu. You can continue to access the taxonomy management area as you always have from the basic taxonomy search. However, it's also linked from the setup menu, so you can get to it from either place. All right. The checklist setup has significantly changed, but there's a whole section just on checklists, so we'll get to that then. Add data management fields to all setup items. Again, this is a crucial change for the reason that we are expecting so many more players to be in a single database. There really needs to be accountability about who has changed which items and when. And for that reason, we have gone into all of the setup and configuration tables and added traceability information. Who touched it, when did they touch it, who made it, when did they make it, everything. That even includes your saved searches now have the date that you have modified it and the date that you created it. So this applies to everything, including if I go into general setup options, it will show, you'll see it says unknown. That means that nobody's modified it since the upgrade. These are brand new fields, so they're not populated until someone makes a modification. But you'll see from now on you will know who has last touched your setup options, okay, and when they did it. And that applies to everything, checklists, all the classification system management, and in some cases you can't see the extra data management fields we've added. So for instance, there are some extra data management fields that have been added to base tables that aren't visible to you. But if you did run into a problem where you weren't sure who had made a change, in many cases we can recover that information for you if there was a serious reason to recover it. In most cases, we've tried to make the data management information, the traceability information, very obvious and available very obviously at the top of every single form. Okay, who made it, when did they make it, when was it modified, who modified it. We've expanded the user initials field to 6 characters. Again, this is with recognition that people will be joining databases and the desire to keep initials fields unique so you can tell who has been making modifications. By having more characters in the initials, you can have a practice such as what Hamilton does, which is put their agency code in front of their initials, making it clear who has made the modification. We've modified access to statistical information. At this point, access to statistical tools are now determined by the user type. There's a whole other section later on statistics that will go into more detail about that. We've implemented a friendly message when the database server is unavailable. So this is when the database server is down, but the web server is up, okay, just to distinguish. This could happen in such cases as a software upgrade or if there was a hardware failure on the database, but the web server was still running. What will happen is it will print a friendly message saying that the database is temporarily unavailable. It includes a special status code telling search engines and so on that this is a temporary unavailability, so they know they need to come back later and re-index the record once the database is properly available again. And if the system detects that you were logged in based on your cookies, then it will provide a link to the Google search how-to document on our community website. Okay, again, this doesn't apply if the web server is down. We can't print a message through the web server if the web server is down. So if there's true unavailability, such as a network outage or a failure on the web server, we cannot do anything about that. But this will at least allow us to handle the cases where it's just the database server that's unavailable. And in particular, during things like software upgrades, this will be helpful to give people more than just an error. Allowing multiple search tips pages. This is intended both for cases where we have multiple agencies working in the same system, but also for those of you that have customized views where your search form may not have the same items as a search page in another view. Now you can create search tips customized to the particular view and apply it to however many views you want. So just as an example, I go to Setup, and I'll go to Search Tip. So here's my giant search tips. In this particular search tips, you'll notice it says in subject. If you created a view where they were not using the thesaurus, having instructions to the end user about how to search with subjects would be incredibly confusing. So the ability to create multiple search tips means that if you have a view that doesn't have these options, you can remove references to search terms that they can't access from your search tips. You can have as many different search tips as you want, and they are language specific. So you would have one for English and one for French. Once you've chosen a search tip, you can set the search tip you want to use in your view type. And another related change that we've made is that if you don't have a search tip assigned to a view, it will not print the search tip link. So it used to be that this link would always show up, this search tips link, even if you didn't have any search tips. And now it will hide that link if you don't have any search tips in the view. We've integrated some official SQL help into the software. So that means it's been removed from the management area, and there are some very, very extensive SQL help been added to the software. And I mean very, very, very extensive. Huge, long, giant, massive document explaining practically everything you would ever want to do. This is, of course, intended only for our advanced users that have SQL permission. And this is not a beginner's guide. This is intended for users who want to be able to do more sophisticated things. It provides a more detailed reference. It's limited on examples because it is a factual reference rather than a quick how-to for any specific thing. But it will give some specific examples, such as with searching feedback. I can get some very specific examples of how to search records that have feedback or don't have feedback, and so on. For every table in the database that you can search, you'll see it'll give you an explanation of the table, how you search it, and then it'll have field name listed like this in italics. And if you say show field name list, it'll show you all of the different fields that are available to search in that table and what kind of field it is. So a text field you can search in a specific way. A full text field you can search using full text queries, and so on. So there are areas in this document that tell you how to search each kind of field, how to search a date field, how to search a full text field, how to search a drop-down field. All through the document are explanations about how to do that kind of searching.
You get to that document from the, there's a link next to the...
So here I am on the advanced search page, and I have permissions to search SQL, so I'll see this block, and you'll see this SQL help link. This link and that page is only available to people who have the permissions to do add SQL. If you don't have permissions to search with that SQL, you will not see that link. In addition, and you'll see a little generic note at the end of this slide that says general security audit and updates. That's because there has been a very general overview of the software to look for security issues and do what we can to reduce any security risk or issues. And one of the things that we have done with this change is at a database level, really tightened up the security around add-SQL. So if you are using add-SQL, there are extra security measures put in place to ensure that someone doing add-SQL cannot do anything damaging or dangerous. So you needn't worry about that if you're doing add-SQL. At this point, the database has been changed in a way that we protect the database from anything destructive that could happen by using add-SQL. Okay, any questions about any of those on this slide? Okay, next, view setup enhancement. Show the view number in the Edit View drop-down list. This is useful for those of you who make specialized views and want to provide a link to the specialized view to the public. So from View Setup, in the Manage Views area, you'll now see that there is a view number printed in front of every view in the drop-down list, making it easier for you to identify the view number for those of you who use these public views that don't have special addresses, where you would be putting things like view CIC view equals 30. Okay? So it's specifically to obtain that special number if you are doing a publicly accessible specialized view where you don't have a special web address and you have to use CIC view or use vol view. Okay? Add and remove items from the advanced search page. So we started this feature in a previous release, but we've added a significant number of additional options for configuring the advanced search page. So you'll see the list is incredibly large at this point, in part because every single checklist in the database has been added as an option to this configuration. So besides all the ones that you've seen before, you're going to see the all of the checklists available as options to add and remove from your search form. Okay, all the checklist searching I'm going to address in a later slide, so I won't get into details, but be aware that this is how you configure which checklists are available on your advanced search page. Add and remove keyword search from a basic search. So again, we already had added the ability to configure your basic search page in a previous release. What we've done is specifically the ability to add and remove the keyword search from the front search page. Select specific publication codes for the quick list or advanced search in a non-limited CIC view. A limited CIC view, limited means it also has to be a publication view. A limited view is always confined to the general headings for the publication that the view is based on. For a non-limited view, even if it is a publication view, you have the option to select specific publication codes instead of the old option where you could only specify either public or non-public. So in the past, your option was display all publications or only display public publications. But now you can say only display specific publications. So I can go to my full list and I can say, okay, I want to see 211 telehealth and 211 YJS and so on, and I can add just the specific ones that I'm interested in. Okay, and update that view. And you'll see it'll have listed the ones that I have selected. And what view is this? The sandbox view. I switch to the sandbox view. Okay. You'll see that my quick list now only contains the 3 codes that I chose instead of all the codes that are available. And for those of you with gigantic lists of publications, which is the vast majority at this point, this should be very useful for you to prune the publications that are actually appropriate for the specific views. And especially if you have multiple agencies and they each want to be managing their own codes, this allows you each to select the ones that are applicable to the work that you're doing. You can now edit your view fields in a pop-up window. So in the past we had, let me close this one up. In the past we had an issue where you had to submit the view changes before you modified your fields. And it was certainly possible that people would leave the page without actually submitting the changes that they made to the view setup, and they hit update fields or feedback fields instead of first saving the changes that they had made on the form. And even though we had a note saying, remember to save your changes first, what we've done is instead made these a pop-up window. You can see my pop-up windows, right? Okay. So instead, we have it as a pop-up window so that you can select the field and return to your form and continue editing your view without having to go back and forth, back and forth. You can now set display options for a non-logged-in view, or it also applies to a logged-in view if your users have not set their own display options. Meaning when you set your display options, you have the option to do save as my default. If someone has not done that, then the first time that they log in, it will also default to whatever you have specified in this form. You'll notice that this form is a lot more limited than what is available normally to you because a lot of these options just aren't applicable to non-logged-in users, and this has specifically been set up with things that are only allowable to users that are not logged in. You have the option of picking any of the predefined record number, record owner, update schedule, and so on. You also can pick any specific fields that you want, including email, phone, contact, website, anything you want to add as a column in your search results. So if I decide that I want to always display the website field, I'm going to web enable, and that changes. I'm going to go and search in that database, or that view, in the sandbox view. So if I look for show me only organizations with a website, I need to log out so we can see that. Okay, so I'm logged out right now, and you'll notice that I've now added this new website column. Okay, so anyone who did a search in this view would now automatically see the website column as part of their search results for every search. I need to log back in. Okay, we've already discussed the search tips. You can, in your view setup, specify which search tips, if any, you want available in your view. You have the ability to remove the volunteer menu link from the CIC module, but not vice versa, and that is because the volunteer module does depend on the community information module, so there are always links back from the community information side to volunteer. But if you're creating a specialized view, a login-based view for an organization that really doesn't interact with the volunteer software, you can remove this volunteer menu item from the menu, from within the view setup. And of course, I have to discuss this in great detail later. You have the ability to set a setting that says whether or not that view respects privacy profiles. I have a whole slide on privacy profiles, so I'm not going to get into it here. Other than privacy profiles, does anyone have any questions about any of these view setup enhancements? Okay. Do the checkboxes in the quick list, when you select only certain publications to show, mean that you can select more than one publication? Okay. Yes. Gary is asking about the quick list setup, how I had it as checkboxes instead of a drop-down menu. And yes, when you configure your quick list to be checkboxes, then people can select more than one. And it's an inclusive selection, meaning if I picked 211 and YJS, then the match would be either one. So either it could belong to 211 Telehealth or 211 YJS, not both. It's an either type of selection. So that's an option in your quick list setup that has actually existed for a while, where you can switch between the drop-down menu or the checkboxes. And the checkboxes are pick more than one. They're pick as many as you want. Any other questions about that view setup? Okay. On to the next one. Statistical and search engine enhancements. Okay, our first one on the list is to modify access to statistical information. I mentioned earlier that it's now determined by user type. What this means, super users and agency administrators have the same access that they always had, meaning they can, when they access all the reports, it's for everything in the database, and they can limit to any view they want. They sort of have the same blanket permissions they've always had. But for other users, we've now added restrictions. So you have to have a user type that says you can access statistics in order to access the statistical report. In the past, you had the option of providing people with the link to the statistics, and as long as they were logged in, they could access the statistical forms and reports. And now they have to be a member of a user type that is allowed to access statistics in order to do that. And in addition, if they're not a super user or an agency admin, then all of the automatic reports, such as total use, top 50, and so on, are limited to the current view that they are in, rather than the entire database. And in addition, when they do searches, they can search for statistics in the view they're in or any other view that they are allowed to see. Okay, so all of the auto reports automatically default to whatever current view they are in, and the search form, which allows them to search for specific statistics, this one, will only allow them to pick the views that they are allowed to see. So again, it's not even a single view anymore. That's the one change that applies to everyone. You can now pick as many different views as you want. So if you have a client who has both a logged in and a public view and they want amalgamated statistics for both views, you can do that by just multi-selecting the views that apply, or you can make it self-serve if they have a logged in view and they can get their own statistics out. Okay, search engine statistical information. You may have noticed in this form that we have this new field called search engine record views. You now can include or exclude search engine traffic from your statistical report, and you can look at the statistics for any of the specific search engines that we have listed here. This does not include every search engine on the planet. Rather, it includes all major search engines and all of the high traffic crawlers that we have identified as searching the databases on our servers. Okay, so this is it's quite inclusive. You shouldn't consider it a comprehensive list. It doesn't include every search engine out there. That would be impossible, but includes all the major ones, and certainly the high traffic ones that hit your databases are included in this list. Each one of these is associated with a large list of IPs or blocks of IPs that we have obtained through various resources on the internet that list the IPs associated with specific search engines. So this will need to be the list will need to be updated periodically, but it should be a reasonable tool at the moment for you to do more reasonable reporting about what is real traffic and what is search engine traffic. We now direct search engines to detailed pages with no number. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, which may be a number of people, what that means is when I go to a specific record, if you can look in this little bar down here, it says number equals 0, number equals 1, number equals 2. If I click on one of them, you'll see up here we have number equals 1. This tells the software where I am in my list of first, previous, next, last, total. Okay, so in my list of 5, and don't be confused if this says 2 and this says 1. This is starting from 0, and this is starting from 1. So it's always going to be one off. But that is how the software understands where you are in your total list of search results. And the problem that we have is that certain kinds of search engines are unable to deal with this number parameter and think that it may be significant and recrawl the same record multiple times with different numbers. So it may have a different number depending on whether you found it through browse by subject or browse by org or browse by service category. It could be the same exact record, but the search engine might think it's 3 different records because it all had different numbers. So by eliminating that number when we know that the robot looking at the site is a robot based on its user agent, that means that search engines will crawl your site less because it will have less things to check. We're automatically redirecting search engines to the same page with no number. So if Google visited this site trying to get an update on this record with number 1, it would automatically redirect Google to the same page with no number. So that over time, Google should no longer have any records listed in its index of number equals such and such.
There was a question about about the stats with the search engines. So the search engines that are, the IPs for the search engines that are included should be pretty close to 90% or more of the search engine traffic. I based what search engines I took based on what are the major search engines, plus what we actually get traffic for based on the web statistics. And you guys all get what you're...
So we analyze the traffic, the existing traffic that you all have in your databases to come up with an appropriate list. And that's why I said we'll need to reevaluate over time. So a year from now, we may want to reevaluate the traffic you got in the past year to see if there are any additional search engines that we want to add, or whether we need to update any of our IP lists and so on. So it is an ongoing thing. It's not we made the list once and we never have to make it again. So again, the hope we have here is that we're reducing the number of crawls you have by search engines and making the indexing that the search engines do more logical and without that little extra number that really has nothing to do with what's relevant for the people doing searches through search engines. Finally, we have search engine-friendly detail URLs. Currently, this is only available for the community information software. In order to make this properly available for the volunteer software, we need to do a very, very big feature, which is convert you to using friendly record nums, similar to what the community information software uses here, where I have ABC001 as an example. Instead of your op IDs, which are just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. In the long term, we do want the volunteer software to have these as well because it is a very important feature, and here's why. This is the biggest one. It allows permanently deleted records to be properly removed from search engines. We can now send a specific error code to either a browser or a search engine saying that page doesn't exist. Okay, so it's called a 404 error. It's a way of notifying officially that something doesn't exist. We have never been able to send 404 errors to either users or search engines because every single record came from the same page, details.asp. If we sent a 404 error from details.asp, Google would think that the details.asp page didn't exist anymore, and every single record in the database would be removed from the index. That would be bad. So this is a really significant feature for that reason. But even better than that, this new address is immune to future changes to the software, to even if we change platform, where we're not using ASP anymore, any change that we make to the software from here on in, we can preserve that link. So that's really good news, both for database mergers, but also for if we're looking at doing redevelopment of our software in a different software platform, we know that the links that we have now are going to consistently work forever, potentially. There's no reason why we ever have to change these links again, ever. So that's the major driver behind making this change. This feature has been turned on in every database except Thunderbase. That is because it would have broken your custom display even more than we already did break it. So we have to get in touch with you privately about when you want to turn this on. Everyone else, this feature has been turned on. And that means that the links that are going out now in your email update requests and the bookmarks that people are making and the search engine crawling that's happening is all going to be stable from this point on. We don't have to worry about changes to the way these links happen. So that's the really good news. We're automatically redirecting people who access either through an old RSN link or even a num link. We're automatically redirecting them to the new format of links so that over time all the search engines are going to be using this new way of accessing the record, and people have time to update their links before the current links stop working, either because of database mergers or software changes or whatever the case may be. So your old links will continue to work, and they will redirect to this new style of link. And again, we do want to do this in the volunteer software as well, but the change that we have to make is extremely significant, and we didn't have time to fit it into this upgrade and still do other things. It would have basically meant that that was almost all we were doing, was the change for CIC and the change for volunteer. So that's where we are, and we hope that this is a feature that we're going to have for the volunteer software as well at some point in the future. Any questions about anything on this slide? Any time frame on how long old links will continue to work? They will continue to work until you merge databases, because RSNs will change at that point. The num links will always work as long as we're on this platform. So as long as we're still using ASP to display our information, then the num equals such and such will continue to work. But the RSN links, either until we change platform or until you merge into another database, at which point the RSN numbers change, so your old links are not going to work anymore. There are a lot of RSN links out there. I did go, I actually did go around and look for places that do heavy linking into CIOC, and I have actually sent emails to some of the major sites such as settlement.org to let them know that this change is coming. And I would encourage you to do the same thing. It's a relatively easy thing to do, to go use Google and say, they have a special tool, syntax called link. You do link : and then your site, and you can include some other parameters like the word RSN, and it makes it relatively easy to identify who's linking to you. And if you care about what they're doing and want their links to continue to work, then you can send them an email and let them know that that has changed. Does this mean we have to change descriptions where we hyperlink URL? So if you have hyperlinked URLs to other records in the database, then yes, over time you need to update them, because eventually the old style of link will stop working. Whether that's because of database mergers or a new software platform or whatever, some point in time in the future, those links won't work anymore. So as you update, but it's going to be, you probably have some time. Like, this is not urgent. We did this purposely in a way that gives you time to make the change. So it's not a big panic, oh, we have to change all our links everywhere all over the internet. You do have time to make these changes. If you know you're merging soon, then you have less time. Gary asked about if the any option in the search engine list means any of the individual ones listed, and that's correct. It's only the ones in the list that we can search on. I think that's it. Okay, so if there's no further questions on that slide, I'll move on. Checklist enhancements. Add data management fields to all the setup items. I already covered this. We've added modified date, modified by, and so on to all the checklists. I'm going to go into checklist setup and show you how you see that information. Okay. When you run a print version, it will tell you when it was last modified and who modified it. Okay, so you have to run a print version to see that information. It's not available in the regular setup area. You have to run a print list to see the modified information. There is now a usage count in the checklist area, so you know which checklists are being used by how many records. You will not see this little magnifying glass unless this checklist is being used. If you hold your mouse over the magnifying glass, it will tell you how many times that particular checklist item is being used in your database. That's not just in your view, but anywhere in the entire database. In addition, if you run your print version, you'll also see a column with the usage of each checklist item. I'm going to skip to this one for a minute. Search for records from the checklist management area. So if you see a little magnifying glass, you can click on it to perform a search for all records that use that checklist in your view. It will automatically include deleted records and expired records if applicable. Okay? But it only shows the ones in your view because you never get to have access to ones that aren't in your view. Finally, we have advanced search for all types of checklists. And all of these features apply to the volunteer software as well. Down at the bottom of the advanced search form, we have combined the previous searches for distributions, extra fields, memberships. Those have all been combined, and we've added a whole bunch more. And you can take any one of these items and add a search form. Okay? So you can add as many as you want. So I could do distribution and language. Okay? And you can have as many of these as you want to do. I'm going to clear this form. I'm just going to do language. And these searches are similar to what we have for the publication search, except we have has all from, and that's also been added to the publication search. So you can say, only show me records that have no checklist in the language. Again, this is for checklists. If I have the word English in the language notes, it will not find it from this search. In a way that's going to help you identify where you have not properly used the checklist. So if I search has any from English, or exclude ones that have the word English in them, and then do a search in the languages field up here, it says contains English. This is going to show me any records where I have not properly put those into the checklist. So if I go into Peterborough, whatever this is, Peterborough Workforce Development Board, and I look for English, it says languages English and French. And you may not know by looking at that you haven't actually put those in the checklist. So if I go into Update Record, we'll see pretty clearly that nothing is checked. Okay, they're just sitting in general notes. So if you want to be able to use these checklist searches, one of the first things that you're going to have to do is identify records where you have not properly put the information into the checklist. So looking for has none in the languages checklist will show you any of the records where you have put nothing in checklist. Okay, in this case, it's again only one record. But assuming that we do have some, I can say has all from English and French, and it's only going to show me records that serve both English and French at the same time. Okay? Whereas if I say just French, I might get a different, well, in this case I don't, I might get a different result. Or if I said either English or French, right, has any from, I'm going to get a lot more. Because it could have either English or French or both. And this holds true for any checklist you search. So if I want to do one for accessibility, show me any that are either fully or partially accessible. I can just pick the ones I want, and it'll show me those. Or I can say only exclude ones that say not accessible. And it will only show me records that don't say that they are not accessible. And you can do as many of these checklists as you want, but you can only add each kind of checklist one time. And what appears in this list is whatever you set up in the view setup. Okay, any questions about any of these checklist items? Once you've added, is there any way to then remove? Only by clearing your form. So you can't remove, oh, and you said, clear form, got it. So yeah, but that of course clears your entire form, okay? It would reset everything, not just the checklist. It would reset every single search item that you had put on the form. Okay? All right. Any more questions about checklists? before I move on. Leslie made a remark that the checklists have a great potential for checking data quality, and that's true. Exactly as I had mentioned before, you can identify cases where you haven't put them properly into the checklist, and so on. So it's hopefully a really good tool for you to first validate your data, and then once you have high-quality data, it becomes a very valuable search tool for finding records. Okay. Next, publication and general heading enhancements. So this obviously is just community information, as is the next at least 1 or 2 slides. So I apologize in advance to anyone who's on here just for volunteer. We have added a very similar looking enhancement around the publications where we can now do, with the drop-down, we can either search publications. This list would only include the publications for the view. So if I was in the sandbox view, which I'll switch to, then you see my publications list is just the 3 that I had picked earlier instead of the whole giant list. We have has all from, so that allows you to only bring up records that belong to 2 publications or 3 publications simultaneously. You got that feature because I was doing some testing where I needed to bring up records that belong to 2 publications at the same time, and I couldn't do it. So that meant that you got this feature for free because I wanted to be able to do that and I couldn't. So there you go. You got the has all from publication. So besides just searching publications and the fact that we've limited this to only the ones that are in your quick list, you now, if you're not in a limited view, can also search the general headings of any of the publications that you see. So in this case, I only see 2, and there are 2 that are in my big list. It's only going to show me the publication codes that have headings associated with them. And when I switch, it's going to bring me up the headings that apply to that publication. If I go, I'll come back to that. If I go back to my regular view where I can see lots and lots of things, and I say switch to, you'll see now I have my big list. If I want to see Hamilton mock directory, huge, really huge, then I can search any of those headings from any of the publications that apply to the publications I can see. Now you can only do 1 set of headings at a time, so it's not like the checklist where you can add, although that's certainly an enhancement we can look at in the future. At the moment, you can either search publications or you can search any 1 set of general headings that is available to you in your view, okay? And so on. So again, it has none, has any, has all, has any from. One of the major changes we've made to the way that general headings work, the search works, is if I say has none, then it has to belong to the publication temp and have no headings for the publication temp. If I say has any, it means it has to belong to the publication temp and has any headings from the publication temp. So that is a major search logic change. It used to be that include headings, has none, has any, literally meant has no headings of any kind from any publication, and has any meant has any heading of any kind from any publication. So this is a major change. And the exclude headings has the same behavior of if you're excluding them, it still has to belong to that publication. So if I say exclude through 2, 3, 4, it's still only going to bring up records that belong to temp. If they're not in the temp publication, they aren't included in this search. Because obviously if they're not in the temp publication, then they don't have any temp headings. Okay, and that's all outlined here. Before I get into the copy general headings tools, which is going to hurt people's brains a little bit, does anyone have any questions about those 3 features that I've talked about so far?
Laura's asking, can you now do a global modification of records or say a subcode with headings?
I need more information, because you've always been able to modify the headings and have it apply everywhere. So if you can give me some more information, maybe I can answer that question better. This particular thing is just searching. CCAC and PubCode has 2 headings. I'll give Lori a second to sort that out, and while she's doing that, I'm going to go to get myself set up to demonstrate the next thing. Okay, you're trying to do the publication code and the heading at the same time. No, we don't have the ability to do that right now. We can put an enhancement for that. Right now, you have to add the publication code first and then the heading. That's still the case. So you cannot add a heading unless that record belongs to the publication. But a little hint for you, so from the search results, you pick the ones that you want to add the heading to, and then use your back button, and add that pub, use your back button, and add the heading. That's the fastest way. But right now, you must first add the pub code and then add the heading. That hasn't changed. Okay. Next, we have copy headings tools. There are 2, and they are very different. So they work together, though. They're mutually beneficial feature. So copy headings from. Here I am. I'm in my 211 telehealth publication, and I decide that 211 telehealth has a lot in common with the publication doctors. And I say I want 211 telehealth to also say employment opportunity available and service available in French. Okay? Now those become part of my list of general headings. And the next time I go into the doctors and say copy headings, it's going to show me the ones that I already have in common with that publication. And similarly, if I go in to edit the publication doctors, and I say copy general headings from 211 telehealth, it's going to show me that I already have 2 headings in common with 211 telehealth, employment opportunity and service available in French. These are still independent headings, meaning if I changed employment opportunity available in doctors, it would not change it in 211 telehealth, okay? They are independent. However, it does give you some opportunity to synchronize headings between 2 similar but distinct publications. One of the major examples that spawned this was the fact that the CCACs had very similar classification requirements to the GAIN, which is Services for Older Adults, and that would in turn have very similar classification requirements to a dementia care network. So you can identify that there are certain headings in common with all 3 and use this tool, along with the other one I'm going to show you, to keep those headings synchronized between the publications. You do not have to synchronize all of them. As you saw, I can pick just specific ones that apply. So I see 2 that are already matched. I can say I also want to match child protection agencies. And now you can see child protection agencies has been added to my list of headings. And if I went in again to take a look at how this publication, Doctors, compares with the publication 211 Telehealth, it's now going to show me that it matches on child protection agencies as well as the other 2 that we saw previously. This matches on the English heading name, okay? And again, it matches only on the name. If I change child protection agencies to say just child protection and went into the copy again. It is not going to match, okay? Not going to match because my copy says Child Protection, not Child Protection Agency. Any questions on that one before I go to the next one, which is the one that will hurt your head a little bit? Okay, that one's pretty simple, I think. This is intended to be used along with the next tool that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to go to my advanced search, and here's where you're going to discover why I needed has all. So I'm going to look for publications, has all, from my doctor's publication and my 211 telehealth publication. So I only want records that are in common in this case. And there's none. That's very helpful. All right, well, let's just bring up 211 telehealth, and I'll add some to the doctor's publication. So I'm going to take a few of these and add them to the doctor's publication. Okay, so there are now 7 of these records that have the doctor's publication in them. So I'm going to go in and edit one of them, update publications. You can see that this one already has some 211 health headings, but it doesn't have any doctor's headings, okay? Let's see what these are. So we already know that Child Protection Agencies was one of the headings that I synchronized between doctors and 211 telehealth.
Did you undo your change on it, though?
Oh, yeah, I have to go back and undo my change. Yes, you're right. Thank you. I have to change it back to say Child Protection Agency. Very helpful. Okay. Yep, I see. Well, I could have changed either one as long as they're the same. I'll change this back to say Child Protection Agency so that this works. Okay. And now back to, now I can definitely find items that are in 211 telehealth and doctors both. Okay. Oh, I didn't do has all. Okay. I'm going to see if I can, I don't think I have this as a, no, I don't have it as a field, so I can't show you the headings that way. But we looked at the Burlington hand weavers and spinners, and we saw, I'm going to open this in a new window so we can observe, that it has a description and it has headings in the 211 telehealth publication. I can check all of these records, say, add remove distribution codes. I want to add headings, or I don't want distribution codes, headings. I want to add headings to the doctor's publication based on headings in 211 telehealth. In this case, only one. But I reload this page and watch. Headings. If I update, it's added Child Protection Agencies, which is the heading that was in common between doctors and 211 telehealth. This is a true synchronization. What that means is wherever the headings match, they will be set to be identical. That means adding and removing. So if I go into this particular item and I say I want to update the headings for 211 telehealth, and I'm going to remove Child Protection Agencies. Okay, so I've taken it out. If I go back and do the same thing again, and I'm going to say synchronize headings to 211 telehealth, submit it again, and I reload, gone. It's gone. There's no more headings, because the only heading that they had in common was the Child Protection Agencies, and I took it out. Okay? One of the things to remember, too, though, is where they don't match, like which one of these don't match? Accepting new patients, I think, was not in common with this was not in common with 211 telehealth, that would be preserved. So if I said synchronize, it's going to, see it said 0 records, it's going to leave that heading alone because that heading had nothing to do with what was in common between 211 telehealth and doctors. It's a synchronization that only applies where the headings are the same. So if 211 telehealth has headings that are not in the doctor's publication, they're not going to get involved. And if doctors have headings that are not in the 211 telehealth publication, they will not be impacted by the synchronization. The order that you do it is important. So one of them has to be your master publication, and you're going to apply the setting from your master publication to your slave publication, which is the one that's automatically set based on the other. What this means is that, or what I recommend that this means, is that where possible, maintain a single master list of headings. That way, your data managers only have to maintain the classifications in one place. They can synchronize it automatically to every other publication, and it will only modify the headings that apply to that publication. Are there questions about that? It's a little bit, if you haven't done it, it might hurt your head a little bit. Okay, so the idea here is hopefully minimizing the amount of work you're doing because you only have to maintain the classifications in one place, and then with one click you can synchronize the headings across all your records, across every publication that has the same classification. And wherever you make specialized classifications, it will leave those alone. Yeah, Mark is saying it will take some hands-on. It will. The key here is that one of them has to be your master. You have to decide which publication or publications is the one where you're actually doing your data management work, and then the other ones are synchronized to that master publication. And it's really important to do them in the right order because otherwise you are going to be overwriting your master copy with your not master copy. Okay, very powerful tool, but Mark's right, this is going to take, you're going to have to really think about how to use it effectively, and likely the first few times especially that you do it, be very conscious and aware of what you're doing. But hopefully it will save you all tons of work. All right, that's it for publication and general heading enhancements, unless anyone else has any questions about those changes. Okay, next. What's next? Child care. Oh, I'm going to come back to that one. Record privacy. Yeah, I'll do record privacy next. Okay. Record privacy. Okay, this has two components. The first component is a privacy profile. A privacy profile allows you to say that certain fields that you would normally allow to be displayed in the record will not be displayed, depending on who the user is. So the main example of when you would use this is if there's a private address or a private phone number or private contact or private email, etc. You can create a profile, a privacy profile that says private, that's called private address. And that private information will be automatically hidden from anyone who is not logged in or anyone who is operating in a view that is set to respect privacy profiles, meaning they cannot see private data. So the idea being that rather than dumping it all in internal memo, you can keep it where it's supposed to be, and it will automatically hide wherever it's supposed to hide. Okay, that is what this is for. However, if you see my big, do not use privacy profiles against data that is shared with 211ontario.ca. So incredibly important. 211ontario.ca does not have privacy profiles, and we have not yet worked out any arrangement about how to deal with the exchange of information into 211ontario.ca. Until we have notified the membership that we can deal with private information through 211ontario.ca, do not use privacy profiles on any records or fields in the records that you are sending to 211ontario.ca. If you have a private field that you're not sending to 211ontario.ca anyway, then that's fine. But if this is data that you normally send to 211ontario.ca, do not put a privacy profile on it. Continue to put that information in the internal memo until you hear differently. This feature was actually brought in relation to the child care enhancements that I skipped over, and in that case, the record that they use it on is not shared with 211ontario.ca. And you may have private records that are not shared with 211ontario.ca where you can begin to use this, but for now, even though it's there, and even though you might have a use for it, if you share your data with 211ontario.ca, you cannot use it yet on those records. Okay? Very important. There is the capacity built in to handle privacy profiles through import and export. So when you export data through the sharing format, you have a choice about whether or not to include the private fields or not. So you can say include private data. It will automatically export the privacy profile with the record. And the person who imports it can match up that privacy profile on their end so that the information continues to be private. So the issue is not with this private data going into the Ontario CIOC database. That's fine. The issue is from it going from the Ontario CIOC database into 211ontario.ca. There's nothing there to keep the data private. So that's why we can't do it yet. All right? There is no privacy profile on Edibase or the standard XML exports, okay? So that's one thing to keep in mind, too. That private information is not hidden in either the standard XML export or the Edibase export. If this is something that ends up in general use and we need that feature, we can do that. But right now, there's no way to do that. And that's just because those exports work in a completely different manner than the sharing format, and it's more challenging to isolate private information. So right now, privacy profiles work everywhere in the software except Edibase export and the standard flat XML export. No privacy profile there, okay? So please keep that in mind. Any questions about privacy profiles before I talk about passwords? Guess not. I mean, no one can really use it yet, which is unfortunate. Hopefully at some point we will resolve the privacy profile thing, and then you will be able to use this as it was intended on any record. But at the moment, it's just not possible. Okay. Feedback passwords. Please use this feature very, very sparingly, or you will regret it. You have the option of putting a feedback password on any record in your database. What that means is the person providing feedback would have to supply this password either in order to suggest an update to the whole record or just the private information. So when a record has a privacy profile attached to it, the private information is hidden from the feedback form for obvious reasons. If it's private, then it's private. It's also private on the feedback form. However, you can optionally add a password onto that record, and if they provide the password, then they would be allowed to see and update that private information. Even if you don't use privacy profiles, however, you can still add a feedback password to a record and then say they have to provide that feedback password to update any part of the record. By default, it would be, if you're using it with a privacy profile, you can choose that they have to provide a password just for the private information, or they have to provide a password for the whole record. So that's a choice. So if you still want the public to be able to suggest updates on everything but the private information, you can do that. And if they don't supply a password, they could still update it, but not the private information. Okay? The feedback password is never, ever displayed in the record. The only place that you can see the feedback password is from the update form. So only the data manager that can update the record has the ability to see and change the password. You would have to decide upon a password or get a password from the organization and enter it into the update form. That's the only place to see and change it. There is a new field in the database called privacy information, and if you add that field to your display, it would show you if there was a feedback password, and it would tell you if you were using a privacy profile. However, it does not say what the password is. That is hidden. So this may be useful to you for if you have a record where people often are trying to sabotage it or trying to send complaints through it or anything like that, where you don't want the general public to be able to do the update, or the organization is very firm that they don't want the general public to be able to suggest an update, then on a case-by-case basis, you can set up a password for that organization. Don't do it for all your records. They will be asking you constantly for what the password is. So just don't do it. You will be very sorry. Okay, any questions about privacy? Yeah, Leslie was just saying this is helpful if you have a record someone is targeting for a mischievous suggestion update. So if you know you have a problem with a particular record, you can work with the organization to set up a password for them just to protect that one record. Okay, if there's no further questions about that, I'll move on to the next. Okay. So volunteer-specific enhancements. Volunteer profiles, which we discussed in detail in the last software update, we have incorporated a number of changes that were based on the feedback we got when we put the volunteer profiles into the software after the last software update. So what we have done, we made some minor changes and rewording, but the significant changes are the addition of privacy profiles. And so we do strongly suggest that anyone who wants to use volunteer profiles make sure that this is set up prior to activating volunteer profiles in your database. You have to activate volunteer profiles on a view-by-view basis, and it first has to be activated in your database. So if it's not available in your view setup, you have to contact me. I will activate it in your database, and then you can activate it on a view-by-view basis for any public view. Volunteer profiles are not available to staff. They're only available to the public. Okay, where do you edit the volunteer privacy information? It's in your general setup at the very bottom of the form. You would list the name of any volunteer center organizations that are going to have views with privacy profiles. So, you know, I might say Volunteer Hamilton. If you had a number of different organizations, you could list them with a comma. So if you're in an amalgamated database with a number of different organizations operating the volunteer software, you would list each of those organizations separated by a comma. And finally, your volunteer profile privacy policy indicates to the volunteer how and when you would use the information that was provided by the volunteer in their profile. At the moment, you do not have access to any of their information. However, we do anticipate that in the future we will allow controlled access to that information. And to that end, we have added a checkbox within the volunteer profile where they can specify that they are willing to share their search profile with you, so that you would have the opportunity to review their search profile and contact them about opportunities or about their search profile. Okay, so again, if you want this activated in your database, just get in touch with me. I have already activated it in a number of databases where it's been requested, but you still have to turn it on in your public view, and you will want to do this setup here, the volunteer center organization names, and some kind of privacy policy before you do that. Okay, and these would be available to the volunteer when they're reviewing their profile information. Very simple change. When you're in the volunteer member management area, it displays the member name. It didn't before, so it wasn't clear which member you were working with. When you're doing data entry, there's a data request field, and it now has a Today button, so you don't have to type in the date. You just hit Today. And you can hide the Ontario Secondary School Diploma search for from the Student Opportunities page. So this is applicable to, especially to those outside of Ontario who do not have an Ontario Secondary School Diploma component to their volunteer opportunities. When you turn this feature or this search off in the advanced search, it's automatically deactivated in the student search. Any questions about those enhancements? Okay, next. CIC-specific enhancements, and after this I'll do childcare, and after that I think is, I'll do common enhancements first, and then I'll do, because then the volunteer people can leave. I'll do common enhancements, then childcare, then CIC, then client tracker. Okay, common enhancements. We've already touched on the fact that we've gone from using RSNs to using NUMs. And again, this is so that we could have that friendly record number link, and so that the transition to merging of databases and so on could more easily be supported. So everywhere in the data structure of the tables and all the links within the software, we're all using NUMs instead of RSNs. That includes the volunteer software. So when you're adding a new volunteer record, instead of looking for the RSN, you're looking for the NUM, the friendly NUM. Assign owner to new record suggestions from the feedback page. And again, this applies to both. Oh, you have to look my database. I don't have any. Here we go. So we've now broken it down. Instead of having just new record suggestions, it's broken down into new record suggestions for me, my agency, which is GU, new record suggestions that are unassigned, and at the very bottom we have new record suggestions that have been assigned to other agencies. To assign them is as simple as you pick it and you say assign it to GU, and then you'll see now it's in my list of new record suggestions. And again, this is to facilitate when we have more agencies working together in the same database, so that there's a way to triage these new record suggestions and direct them to specific agencies so that they can be processed. You can reassign. So once it's been assigned, you can reassign it to another agency. Probably everyone's noticed this one, print your search information. So every single type of search that is available in the database, and there are somewhere around 100 different kinds of search parameters, now print out what you searched for. So this is a big one. So if I say show me all the records in Ancaster and Dundas, display the details of my search, oh, there's a lot. It'll say I performed a search for located in community Ancaster or Dundas. And I can add as many other criteria as I want, only ones that have volunteer opportunities. Okay, and I'll keep adding on my criteria. So this covers every single kind of criteria that you can possibly enter. You will notice in some cases the phrasing is a little bit different for the public versus for logged-in users. So the public doesn't see publications, they see categories. They don't see general headings, they see categories. Because to the public saying, you searched for general headings, blah, 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 is weird, or publications. So it would say, you searched for categories, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if you're logged in, it will use the terminology, publications, headings, and so on. By default, this is turned on in every single way of searching the database except advanced search. And this applies to volunteer and CIC. Everything I'm talking about in this section does. In advanced search, you have to explicitly say that you want to display the details. That is because there are so many advanced search ways of doing advanced search where the details of your search could be enormous and very complex. So there's no point in clouding up half your page with the information or putting any extra strain on the server to go and look up all the names of 100 different publications or whatever, if, in fact, you don't actually need to display that information. So when you're doing an advanced search, if you want to see the details of your search, you need to specifically check it off. Besides that, you'll see that we have open search results in a new window. So if you are not sure whether you're going to get the results you need from a particular search, you can always choose to open the search results in a new window and tweak your search without having to use the back button or anything else. Or if you want to open multiple searches where you're just changing the parameters a little bit, you can open each one of them in a new window. So I can say accessibility, first show me all the ones that are fully accessible, then show me all the ones that are partially accessible, then show me all the ones that are not accessible. You can see them all loading in my 3 tabs over here. I have a zillion records in my database. So there you go. Accessibility, fully accessible, then I have one for partially, and then I have one for not. And I've opened them all in separate tabs. So that feature, that new window feature, is available in advanced search for both modules and also the child care search. Okay, browsing, this is a really simple one. Browsing through records, so when you're in your search results, it now has the next last total. If you're logged in, it has next last total at the top and the bottom. Okay? It doesn't show it twice if you're not logged in. The main reason is that staff usually have really, really long records, and they may want to proceed to the next record from the bottom of the page, whereas the public tends to have much shorter records and doesn't require that bottom link as much. So that was a very simple change. And we already just discussed the new window. So any questions on those search enhancements? The online community resources, the test site, and everybody, at this point, everybody except Toronto is upgraded with all of these features, and that includes our test sites. So some of them, the features I'm mentioning, you have to turn on, and others should be already activated just because they're blanket features that everybody gets. Okay, now I'm going to go, at this point, I have covered everything that is applicable to the volunteer software. So anyone who's volunteer only can feel free to go if you have better things to do. And I know we're running over time, but I'm going to keep on going here. And I will stay until I'm done. And for those of you who can stay, and the rest of you can look at my slides or the video after. Okay. I'll do other CIC, then child care, then client tracker. Other CIC, reduce the file size of import files. We have halved the size, approximately, of import files. So that should mean when you are sending your updates to find help, they should be much smaller. So much nicer on your email box for both the sender and the recipient. And we've done that by changing the encoding of the files from a 16-bit Unicode to an 8-bit Unicode, if anyone cares. Clickable map links in results.ast. So I'll go to total here. So if I am web-enabled and I show the site address field, there we go. And we have map links. Okay? That only applies if you're web-enabled. If you're not web-enabled, you do not see this link. So if, for instance, you're producing this as a report going into Excel or a print report or whatever the case may be, it's not going to show those items. But if you don't web-enable it, So if you wanted to print these records out or bring them into, Firefox bug, or bring it into Excel or whatever the case may be, and you don't want to show the map links, then if you turn off Web Enable, just like with everything else where if you're doing a print report, you don't want it to Web Enable the publication codes or the subject and so on. When you take the Web Enable out, it will remove the map link. Pretty simple one. Friendly display version of the publication field. If you want to show on your record details the names of the publications instead of the codes, then you can do that. A lot of records. I guess I don't have it added here. So here you see the publication code. If you add the publication-friendly field to your details instead, then it won't say 211 telehealth. It will say, or it won't say 211 TOH. It would say 211 space telehealth. So if you find it confusing to remember what all the codes are for and you prefer to work with publication names, you now have the option of displaying the names instead of the codes from your record details pages. That's only for display. It's not for updating or anything else. It's just the display field. We can now do import-export on all of the business fields that we added in August that weren't part of the export. So employees, membership, makes, extra checklist, extra drop-down A and B. Friendly names everywhere. Within your view setup, you have the ability to say that you prefer to see friendly publication names. However, we have still always showed the publication codes if you were doing an advanced search. And now, if you have said that you prefer names, it will automatically use the names instead of the codes from the advanced search form. If you have your setting to be codes and not friendly names, then it will continue to use codes. Additional data fields in the publication general heading area. Go to update service, or not update. Okay. Well, actually, I'll go there first. So update service category. See, we have this show field for those of you who have done indexing with the taxonomy, where we have this drop down. I've added that to the publications area. So I go to update publications. I now can see the description of the record at the time when I'm doing a publication description or adding the headings. I could see the subject if it was applicable. And in addition, if you've added other fields, it's limited. It's whatever you can see in the index. So when you were doing indexing for the taxonomy, the fields that you have access to there are the same fields that you have access to here. So for those of you familiar with doing taxonomy indexing, it's exactly the same step. Add, remove, link taxonomy terms in bulk. So our bulk taxonomy tool used to only allow you to do standalone terms, not linked terms where you might have mental health and youth or something. I'm making things out. Where you had two terms linked together. Now you can add and remove a set of linked terms just as if it was a single term. So all the same rules apply. You can add and remove a set from a set. You can say that you want to leave it alone if it has additional links. All of the same capabilities that you used to have with one term, you can now do with multiple terms. So I can say add, remove, taxonomy term. And rather than just adding a single term, I have the option of linking as many terms as I want. And you separate them with a tilde. There we go. use my favorite, which is thrift shop. So if anyone wants to see the report, so it's added thrift shop and use as a linked term. And if I go into one of these records now, we have thrift shop and use as a linked term. Okay? And similarly, I can remove that whole link. So if I say delete these terms, I can specify if it's linked to other terms, meaning say this said youth adult thrift shop, that means it's linked in a bigger set. So I can say don't remove it if there's other things in the link, or I can say remove these terms from the link but leave the rest by itself. So in that case it would leave the term adult sitting all by itself. Or I can say remove the entire set that contains the link. So in this case it would remove the entire link including the term adult that was linked to it. Okay, so same options you had before, only now it's removing a set instead of a single term. Oh, don't need that. And now if I go into the record, no more use in thrift shops. Okay? Revise the word fields. All right. So there's a question apparently. Here we go. Better late than never. Thanks, Mark. Did you enter space before and after? Doesn't matter. Space is irrelevant. So you don't need to enter a space. I would say don't, because there's no reason to, but if you do, it won't matter. That's the answer about spaces. Chris is yelling at me from downstairs, and I can't hear what he's saying. Maybe he could type it in. I have no idea. Okay, revise the word field. So we have added the municipality component to the word field, and that means that you can now share your ward data between databases. Before, if you had more than one municipality in your database, you could not use the word field because it only allowed one set. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 could only occur one time in your whole database. So if you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Hamilton and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Halton, they couldn't coexist in the same database. Now that we've added the municipality component, you can say Ward 1, Halton, and it will understand that Halton Ward 1 is different from Hamilton Ward 1. And that means that it's possible for you to share your ward data either into the provincial database, if that is ever desired, or with each other if you share records to your neighbors. And you will want to go into your checklist setup, into your ward setup, and start adding your municipalities. It's not required, so if you're never sharing your ward information outside of your database, you do not have to put the municipality in. But if you want to share it with others who will also have ward information, then you need to put a municipality in. Okay. Okay. I have, okay. So I had said, someone had asked a question about entering a space before and after the tilde when you were doing linked terms. And I wasn't clear when I said space doesn't matter, that it doesn't matter if you have extra spaces between the terms and the tilde. When you're linking the terms together, the software just takes care of it. Okay, so once you've added yours, like I have here the municipality Burlington, then it will show, instead of just saying Ward 1, it will say Burlington Ward 1. So it has the name of the ward, if it's applicable, because I know in Hamilton they don't have any fancy ward numbers. And then if you've added a municipality name, it will go in front of the word ward. All right. And the other thing we've done, obviously, is made it clickable. So if you do enter ward data in your database, it is a clickable term now. So I can click on a Burlington Ward 1, and bring up all the records that belong in Burlington Ward 1. Finally, this was done before but not reported. We have added the building field to Word Setting Research. That just wasn't marked as complete. It was done in a prior update to the software, but I'm just officially reporting it here. Any questions about any of those items on this particular slide? Okay. Next, I guess I'll tackle child care. I'm going to use the Inform Hamilton database, I think, for this. I might use my local copy. Should be all right. Okay. So we have added a whole set of new features and functionality around child care searching and child care records. The new fields that are part of this are type of care, best time to call, transportation, schools and area, school escort, type of program, subsidy, space available, and child care license information. All right, I will show exactly what all of those fields look like and what they're for. The idea of these extra fields is it was specifically organized around communities that provide specialized child care INR, but hopefully all of you will recognize the value of the specialized child care searching and make that available. It's up to each of you in your own databases whether you feel that the use of any or all of these fields is valuable to you. However, speaking as someone who's looked for child care, being able to search using the kinds of child care search forms that are available now in the software is far superior to what is by default available in a CIOC search. So one of the easiest ways to demonstrate that to you is to take a look at the new child care search form. The child care search form only brings up records that are designated as child care resources. So part of what you have to do if you want to activate the child care related features in your database is you need to begin designating records in your database that are related to child care as child care resources. By doing that, you make them available on the child care search, which is the search form that I'm looking at right now, and you also gain access to all the special child care specific fields. The child care specific fields, you decide whether or not you want them on your update and feedback forms, in partly the same way you always have, in that you have to add them in your view setup. But there's an additional component to your view setup where you specify if those child care fields are always available or only available when you are working with a record that's designated as a child care resource. This is so that you don't have a lot of superfluous fields that don't matter to your average record, cluttering up your entry and feedback forms when the record has nothing to do with child care. So if you do want to do this, my recommendation to you is within your view setup, you need to do two things. First thing you need to do is the obvious one. You have to, in your update field, add the new child care field. Okay, so that would be, it'll be at the bottom here. Type of program, type of care, whichever ones you want to use. Okay. So that's step one, and again, to your feedback forms. That is not enough to make them show up on your forms. Okay? Because there's another setting here called child care resource fields, where you specify if you want those fields to always show up on your forms, meaning for every single time you do an update of a record and every single time you do feedback or suggest a new record, it's going to show those child care fields. Or what I think is preferable is you show a prompt, and if it will only show the child care field if you've designated the record as a child care resource. And once you've designated a child care resource, all of those child care fields that you added will now appear in the forms. Okay? That means that it's not cluttering up these forms for things that have nothing to do with child care. Once you've designated a record as a child care resource, and again, you do that while you're updating the record, It will automatically do that anytime you add data to any of the child care fields, or if you specifically say in the update form there's a checkbox saying designated child care resource, that will turn it into a child care resource. Then you can bring it up using this specialized child care search form. You can enter the dates of birth of the children, specify whether you want it to match just any one of the children or all of the children in the same program. You can specify if they need the care sometime in the future, so it will automatically calculate the age of the children at the time they require care, because obviously the gaps in a lot of these programs is as little as a year, and a couple of months here or there could mean that they do or do not qualify for a particular program. So knowing when they require care matters. Or if you want to do a quick search, you can pick a group of ages. The age groups that appear here are specially selected from the global list of age groups because you want to be able to not have things like seniors and adults and youth, things that do not apply to child care searching. So from within your normal age group search setup that you've always had, there's an extra checkbox saying whether or not that age group appears on the child care search form. And we have type of care. These are, everyone has been given these pre-defined types of care, and you can then modify them. So just like any other checklist, if there's more that apply or you don't want some of these types of care, you can take them out. But the advantage of using standardized lists is that there's a commonality between each of the databases about what types of care are available. So you can search any of the types of care or all. So if they need both before or after school care, you can click before and after school, match all selected types of care, and it will only bring up programs that have both before and after school care. If they're flexible and they either want part-time or part-day care, but they don't actually care which one it is, you can match any. Okay. In addition, there's type of program. Again, this is a predefined list that's been provided to you of some of the general types of programs that you may want to list, but you can modify this to be appropriate to the services that you offer in your database. In particular, home child care programs. Hamilton has a home child care registry, and so they want the ability to list home child care services in their child care search, but that's not something that is normally listed in our key information database that doesn't offer specialized child care services. So that's something that you may want to remove. You can, if you want, if you track which programs offer subsidy, you can limit to only ones that offer subsidy, and if you want to track space available, you can limit to programs that report that they have space available. Keeping in mind that these are all removable from the form, so if you're not tracking subsidy, you're not tracking space available, you can take them off the search form. You can specify ones that are on a particular bus route. That's a new checklist that was added as part of the work for the child care software. However, that bus route field is available to all the records in your database. So you now have the ability to track bus routes for the whole database, not just child care programs. You can specify that it's near to a school or that they escort to a particular school. So if they know that they want one nearby a certain high school, then you can pick the high school from the list, but obviously they're not likely to escort to that high school because it's not applicable. So if they want one that escorts to a particular elementary school, I can pick escorts to Ancaster Senior, and it's only going to show me programs that say that they escort to that school. And once again, we have the same kind of search that we always have, and that can be used for things like, do they do field trips or other things that might be in the description that they would want to locate. In the case of home child care programs, it's often, do they have an ECE? Things like that. Any questions about that so far? At this point, is it possible to exclude an age group specifically set up for child care? No. So there's a question about whether you can remove an age group set up for child care from the main page, and you can't. I would like to change that so that you can decide which ones go on the front page and which ones go on the child care page, and they don't have to be the same. But right now, all of your age groups appear on the front page, and you have to explicitly pick the ones that go on the child care page. A search from child care search will always include deleted records. No, a search from child care search will not always include deleted records. It will always exclude deleted records. If you want to find deleted child care records, you can do that from the advanced search. It will include pending deletion. Mark it that. It will include pending deletion. It will not include records that are deleted, but you can get those records from advanced search. And the same way that you always have. And part of the advanced search form, and part of what you can include on your advanced search form, is the ability to show or hide, or show or exclude child care records. So if I go to advanced search, there's a child care resource, all records, only child care, and exclude child care. And in addition, all of those specialized child care checklists, like type of program, type of care, are available on the advanced search form as well. And I guess I didn't even document the fact that you can now, from the English advanced search, I documented it on the bulletin board, but that was it. You can now do all records, has equivalent, has no equivalent. So there you go. That's not even listed, except on the bulletin board. Okay. Any other questions about the child care? If anyone wants some guidance about how to do the child care, if you're interested, please post on the board, and I would be happy to give you some guidance. And I'm sure Hamilton, who's the pilot for this, would be happy to give you some guidance. The history of this is that the features that have been added for child care are based on another piece of software that I wrote originally almost 11 years ago, and actually predates this version of CIOC, so long, long ago. And I basically didn't have the time to do new things in that software. So I approached the board and asked them if I could merge in my child care software into CIOC so that it could continue to grow and take advantage of the work that gets done in CIOC rather than sort of sit around and stagnate, which is what had been happening. It was working fine, but I just didn't have the time to devote to new things in the software. So, the client tracker and a lot of CIOC were all originally based out of the things that I had done in this child care software that is both a client tracker and an INR software packaged together. So this rolls the things that that were lacking in CIOC, that were part of child care, have been rolled into this software as of this release. And if no one has any questions about the child care, then I'm going to move on to next, which is, I think, client tracker. Hopefully I've covered all these slides. Okay, client tracker enhancements. Cross-tab, I'm going to be quick here, and then you can just ask questions. Cross-tab reporting, the ability to search multiple survey criteria at once. So you can pick one criteria, as you always have, show me only this answer to this question, and then you can add a completely different survey question and answer and have it match both criteria in order to produce a list of matching requests. So it's just the ability to have more than one survey criteria at once in the survey search and report. We've added more space between the options in the survey to help distinguish between them. We have added client profiles to the client tracker. Most of you will not use this. This was added for the purpose of the child care INR, where they do track clients between requests and often get multiple requests from the same client. If you want to use client profiles, you have to activate it in your agency. By default, because most CICs will not have a reason to use client profiles, by default this is inactivated and you have to go into your agency setup and manually turn it on if you decide that client profiles are applicable for some or all of the kinds of work that you are doing. The advantage of client profiles is that you can track a single person across multiple requests. So if you have a continuation of a single issue, you can track that across multiple different requests over time. You can see all the previous notes that you wrote about that request. You can look at all the resources that you had previously provided to that client. And when you are doing a search in CIOC, it will put a little red asterisk next to any of the resources that you had previously provided to the client in another request. Okay. Sorry, I just had a little flag here from Chris who wanted me to point out that one of the changes we've made, besides addition of the client ID to the client information area, is we've split out the name field for the client into first and last name. And I believe that Chris put all of the existing client names into the last name, but he'll clarify for me. Yes, the last name field. So any existing client information that you had in your request, the full client name has been put into the last name field because we now distinguish between first and last name. The use of the client ID field, again, is configurable on an agency-by-agency basis. So if you, obviously, this is not going to apply to the majority, but for those that do track by client identifier, you can search on that as well as by name, and you can track that just the same you do with the other client information. The main search form for the client tracker now includes a search for client information, name, phone, email, and client ID. It is an exact match search, so it's not contains this name or contains this part of the phone number. It's exact. And I suspect we will change that in the future, but for the time being, it has to be an exact match if it's going to match for that search. You now have the ability to generate a print list in CIOC based on the resources that you select. This had to be activated. I'm not sure if Chris has gotten around to activating for the people who were upgraded on the weekend. Apparently not. For the people who were upgraded last week, I already activated this feature for you, and we will activate it for everyone else, or you can activate it yourself by going into your resource type setup and hitting the Get Config button. That will fetch the new configuration information and will allow you to do printing. So the way it works is I pick a bunch of records for my clients, and a little print icon is going to appear next to the resource type, and when you click it, it's going to send your list of resources that you've picked to the print tool in CIOC so that you can print those records out for your clients. That's how it works. Again, you won't see that little print icon until it's been configured for you. So if some of you are seeing it and some of you aren't, that's because the people last week got it configured and the people this week haven't had it configured yet. But you can configure it yourself if you're anxious. And this was completed in a minor release but wasn't reported because it wasn't a major release. You can now modify certain kinds of surveys without the timer running. That has to be set up on a survey-by-survey basis where you indicate whether that particular survey is allowed to be modified even though the timer isn't running. Any questions about anything? I think I covered everything. Park says lots to digest. Yes, there are 53 listed features in this release. This is the biggest single release we have done probably ever. So although there have been a lot of hiccups, part of that is that we are actually kicking out errors that have existed in the software for some time. But because we're doing a real push to catch everything, we're catching them now. We turned off all the error handling to catch everything we can possibly catch. But again, this is the biggest release I think we have done since the software was written 6 years ago, or 7 years, or whatever it is now. Huge, huge, huge upgrade. Major restructuring, major changes, big, big upgrade. So if it's a lot to digest, and if there's been a lot of challenges, it's just because this is giant. And I hope that you appreciate a lot of the features that we've put in, and that they're really useful to you. We do appreciate if you can give us any specific feedback about any of the features. If they're not working the way you think they should, if you can give us some input. If there's a problem, we can fix it, and otherwise we can start tracking enhancements to change them further. And hopefully some of the things are a little taste of what the kinds of things we would love to be able to do in a larger scale rework of the software. Things like the checklist searches and the publication searches that are more dynamic, just to show you that that kind of thing is possible. We're just giving you a little taste of the kinds of things that we want to be able to do for you in the long term. And for this release, you have to thank your board, who gave us some permission to do a big round of enhancements at the beginning of the year this year. Community Information Hamilton and the Child Care Information Line in Hamilton, who co-sponsored along with us, KCL, putting the child care software into the database. I think Inform Hamilton had a lot of their third-party partners who funded some of the general heading enhancements, statistical enhancements, and Chris and I also sponsored some of these features, including the search engine-friendly URLs and a bunch of others. So big, major release. And as I say, we do appreciate feedback, and as there are issues, we are trying to address them as absolutely quickly as possible. We did do a really extensive testing on this release, but as I say, some of these are pre-existing things that we're only catching because we're monitoring everything. Okay, any other comments or questions? No? Okay, so please don't change your record numbers today. Just a reminder. We will have that working by the end of the day, but don't change your record numbers until the end of the day. You can update, you can add new, but do not change your record numbers for the rest of the day. All right, thanks everyone. I will put my PowerPoint presentation up, and also the video will go up soon as well.